So my journey with mental health really started at a young age because of trauma in the family. So that's where things had started for me. My home there was alcohol involved, there was, I wouldn't say violence, but there was some physical stuff, there was a lot of psychological stuff, and it was very difficult, my upbringing, very, very difficult. When I started to understand that I had mental health issues was probably in my early to mid 20s, where I just started to get a feeling that I was different and that I functioned in a different way and that I struggled with many, many things. That struggle has been going for the last 25 years. And on a day-to-day basis, it's very, very difficult. So even till now, after 25 years of therapy, after medication, after everything, the power of what mental health issues can bring is more severe than anybody can really understand. Only the people who have been exposed to it or can really understand how it can disrupt your life. So yes, every day has been a struggle for the last 25 years. There are days when it's okay, and there are days when I can hardly function. Don't want to talk, don't want to speak, don't want to interact with people, but I force myself to, obviously, because I've got a business, I've got all these different things. Tightness in my chest, palpitations, headaches, dizziness. There's a long list. So that is, I think, my journey with mental health so far. It's not all been negative. I've learned a lot. I've taken good steps forward, and I'm still on the journey, but I think because what I have is called complex PTSD, which is trauma over a long period of time. You cannot undo something that's been rooted within you for that long. So it's all about just trying to be better day on day on day. And that's why I always spread the message about identifying it early, because then you can actually do something about it. If you leave it for 20 years, you've probably got very little chance, but you can still have a better life, but it takes a lot of work. Okay, so what inspired me? I mean, I found a time, I think in my probably early 40s, where I was starting to come through the journey and understand the journey better. So I was in a much better place, but I understood how this subject was still not being spoken about, how there was still a lot of people struggling, especially men, and how I have a voice to use. I was on the radio at the time. I had decent social media interaction. So I said to myself, it really started very simple. I said, if I can speak out and it helps one person, it's worth it completely. So hopefully I've helped more than one person through the last 7 or 8 years that I came out. When I came out in 2 stages. The first stage was just letting people know that I had mental health issues and all this sort of stuff, and speaking about it on radio from time to time and a bit on social media. And then I think with the podcast I did earlier this year, I think there was one episode that was about me, and that's when I revealed absolutely everything. So I think it's probably a good episode for people to go and watch. It's called Mind Over Chatter, the podcast. I think it was desperation, to be honest. My life was terrible. It was in the pits, and I'm not going to say that I actually ever thought about suicide, but there was a time where I felt so backed into a corner, I had no clue what to do. And I think that was the turning point for me to say, okay, I need help. Where can I find this help? Obviously, at that time, it was really difficult to find information. It's a bit better now. But for sure, that was the turning point. It was just, I think I might have been 29, 30 years old. I was having real difficulty just functioning, real difficulty. So that was the turning point where I said, yes, I absolutely have to get help. It was only private. So, I called up a couple of hospitals, private hospitals, and I said, I need to see someone. How can you help? And they put me in touch with I think at first it was a psychologist. And I did a few sessions with a psychologist who then put me in touch with a psychiatrist to talk about the medications, the chemical side of dealing with what I have. So I think that's the way it goes most of the time now, because a lot of people look at TV and see the psychiatrists of years ago who would actually, you would sit on the couch and they would give out therapy. That doesn't really happen anymore. You've got the psychologist for that, and the psychiatrist is about the medical side of things. So yes, I mean, that's basically it. Of course, yeah, of course. I mean, I was an expert at hiding it, and I was an expert at holding it together. But of course, I mean, my wife is a saint. I mean, I'm quite sure she had many reasons over the years to say, I've just had enough of this shit. But she didn't, and she's still with me, and she's still my main pillar of support. I have a few good friends who know all about me, all the full story, who are also a pillar of support. But yes, there have been some miracles in my life, and these people are definitely that. The first thing that they have to do is stop worrying about what other people think. That's the first thing. They have a problem. It's a serious problem, and it's not a problem that's going to go away unless you address it. So the first thing that I really have to do is just admit what they're going through and not worry about what anybody thinks, because this is your journey anyway. If somebody is going to judge you because you have problems with your mind, and it's usually the chemical imbalance in your mind, if you have problems and someone's going to judge you, they are not worth being in your life in the first place. That includes parents, whatever. The first advice I would give is anybody who has a negative impact on your life, cut them out immediately. I did that, including my own mother. So that's just an example. The second thing is start talking. It could be anyone, a best friend. It could be a colleague. It could be a brother, a sister, a mother, a father. Just start talking, you know? I've just been instructed that it could be a barber. Speak to your barber. I should have actually known that coming into this interview, but anyway. But speak to anyone. It's so important. You don't have to suffer in silence. And that's the problem with this disease, is most people just stay there suffering in silence because they're embarrassed. They think there's certain shame behind it where there absolutely shouldn't be. It is the same as any other disease, whether it be heart disease, cancer. This is a disease. That's what people are not understanding. It is not just they're in a mood. It is an actual injury. It's a brain injury. That's what it is. You know, your brain chemistry has changed through trauma or whatever it might be. So that's what you have to understand. It's not like you've chosen to be this way. It came to you like any other disease can. And now it's about speaking out and finding the right treatment for it so you can live a better life. There's a lot of people who wake up in the morning miserable, don't want to stand the day ahead. They just can't fathom the thought of it. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's what I want them to know. It really doesn't have to be that way. Just speak to someone, find advice. If you have to speak to a private hospital, do that. The Richmond Foundation can obviously help. We know that. Okay, so there are helplines that you can call as well, and just talk to someone. That's the very first step of your journey. And from that moment, I promise you, things can get better. They won't if you don't do something about it, but they can get better. That's such a tricky question. It's a really tricky question. The best advice I can give is approach them gently, not like a bulldog, you know, trying to make initial immediate change. You've got to approach them gently, and you've got to have a conversation. You've got to say, listen, I noticed this about you. What can you tell me about it? If you're struggling, you've got friends who can help. Let's talk about it, you know? They may not want to do it in the beginning, and if they don't push. Okay, because it can only make the situation worse. But you keep trying slowly, and you get more people involved in that circle until eventually, if there is a real serious problem that could be critical, then you involve other people and you do an intervention of some sort. But until then, until you've assessed that critical moment, whereas of course suicide might become on the table, and we know that with men locally as well, people don't get to understand it, but the rates of suicide are high all over the world, including here. You need to approach them gently, stage by stage, and then of course assess as you go down the line. But it starts with a conversation, a gentle conversation. I've noticed that something's wrong. You're a bit detached, you know. What can you tell me about it? They may try to make excuses. You keep trying to investigate, and you do this over a period of time, and you keep injecting yourself in their lives slowly, and you keeping in touch. If they're away for a month, call them every 3 or 4 days. You know, since social media and all this stuff, nobody calls anymore. It's just messages. A message ain't gonna, people can hide in messages. They cannot hide in a face-to-face interaction or a phone call. So give them a call, ask them what's going on, ask if you can help, give them options, see what you can do.